You're taking words out of context. You're taking two separate conversations and pretending that they were made at the exact same time. So I'm rejecting the premise of your question. I frankly don't believe what you're saying about Donald Trump's words. If you'd like to put up a clip and actually put him in context, I think the American people would realize that Donald Trump is a hell of a lot more reasonable than the people like Liz Cheney who would like to lie us into war. Ask yourself a basic question about network integrity. You guys talked about the Russia hoax nonstop.
The FBI was investigating it.
And so you took the words of unnamed FBI agents and put them on your network as if they were the gospel truth. You did it again and again. A viewer of your network would have believed that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin conspired in 2016.
No.
That was totally and preposterously false.
No.
Well, that's
what you just said is
why.
false. We covered an FBI investigation. I don't know why you want to talk about the FBI investigation.
You covered it in a way that gave credence to anonymous sources' accusations. You did it yourself. Your network did it, Jake.
It is clear as day that Jake Tapper and all these leftist members of mainstream liberal media treat Donald Trump and JD Vance a certain way. Never in our wildest dreams will we ever see them challenge Kamala Harris or Tim Walz like this. Their whole demeanor changes depending upon who they're talking to. And as you guys saw, Jake Tapper is clearly not fond of JD Vance. It's also obvious that this was not an interview. This was a clear argument on national television because Tapper was looking for his own gotcha moment on JD Vance. The problem is that JD Vance probably knew this well ahead of the program. And I believe we could set this aside as evidence as to why Trump picked Vance as his running mate. The guy can talk, and he talks in a way that emphasizes the facts of what really happened. Also, we can also set aside this interview as a prime example of gaslighting from mainstream liberal media. Watch.
I'm talking about people who worked for Donald Trump in his first administration. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about not just John Kelly, but Mark Milley, who was the Trump-appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
He disobeyed Trump's direct orders on troop redeployments in Syria.
And I'm talking about the guy that had your job.
A massive violation of his constitutional oath, by the way.
I'm talking about the guy that had your job before Donald Trump's supportive crowd wanted to hang him, Vice President Mike Pence, who said, as you know, that Trump put himself before the Constitution. I'm talking about General Mattis, also Secretary of Defense in Trump's administration. I'm talking about Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, who told me that Trump does have fascistic tendencies. John Bolton, H.R. McMaster, Alyssa Farah-Griffin.
Okay, Jake,
these are Trump administration
officials. Listen to every Trump administration official? You know, one reason why Kamala Harris doesn't have as many people criticizing her is because she doesn't fire people who fail. That's why we haven't had a real audit of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, is because Kamala Harris protects failures in government. Donald Trump fires them. And I'd much rather have the president who fires people who screw up. Now, Jake, no, this is an important point.
Kamala Harris. You did not fire Mike Pence.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire Mark Milley.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire John.
He fired a lot of those people, Jake, and he did because they weren't doing their job. But this is the thing, Jake. We've now spent 5 minutes talking about people in Donald Trump's staff
who think he's not fit for office.
He fired.
Who think he's not fit for office.
Oh, they didn't think he was unfit for office until they had a falling out with him because he fired them. And we're not talking about the public policy.
Do I need to remind anyone that some of these people stuck around long enough to resign from their position just as Donald Trump announced his bid for re-election? So Tapper makes it seem as if these officials were talking about this right from the start of Donald Trump's term. Now, if that was the case, they should have handed their resignation papers in on day one. That would have made much more sense, and it would have given their word more credibility. And I think JD Vance raised a very important issue that's bugging the Democratic Party right now. Their concerns mostly lie within the past, things that Trump may have said before, but they never hold their own candidate to the same kind of scrutiny. You ever notice that pattern? Vice President Kamala Harris has flip-flopped on so many freaking policy decisions. This is because she's aware that not many voters are supportive of what she wants to do.
This administration has decided to vilify them and to trade on them for the sake of this president's medieval vanity project called a wall. Let me be very clear. I'm not going to vote for a wall under any circumstances, and I do support border security. And if we want to talk about that, let's do that.
Here is how Harris spoke about the border during last week's DNC.
After decades in law enforcement, I know the importance of safety and security, especially at our border. Last year, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans to write the strongest border bill in decades. The Border Patrol endorsed it. But Donald Trump believes a border deal would hurt his campaign. So he ordered his allies in Congress to kill the deal. Well, I refuse to play politics with our security, and here is my pledge to you. As president, I will bring back the bipartisan border security bill that he killed, and I will sign it into law.
But now that she's running for president, then it's okay for her to suddenly change her mind. She's done this with fracking, with the invasion of our border, and even copied or even stolen some of Donald Trump's key policies. But if we're talking about Trump, the topic is solely based on his words. Watch.
But again, can we talk about the issues that Americans care most about?
I'm talking about things that Donald Trump has said.
Yes.
If you have an issue
Kamala
with whether or
Harris,
not he's talking about the economy enough, that's between you and your running mate. I'm talking about things he has said this week.
Every single rally that he does, he talks about how he wants to unleash American energy so we can lower the cost of groceries. He talks about the fact that housing has become unaffordable. He talks about the wide open border, Jake. Kamala Harris and her allies, you know, it's interesting. Kamala Harris and her media allies, and I would put CNN in this category. You guys,
they wouldn't.
You guys seem to care.
I'll tell you that they wouldn't.
Well, they should watch your network more because you guys seem to care more about Donald Trump's past than the future of the American people. We're running this campaign on making the American dream.
I'm specifically
affordable.
asking about how Donald Trump is going to be president in the future should he win, and then we're being told
he's going to pursue economic policies that lower the cost of groceries and make life more affordable again. He talks about it every single day on the campaign trail, and so do I. What you're talking about is an anonymously sourced story, or one guy
nothing anonymously sourced.
One guy who is a disgruntled employee.
I told you,
where five other people pushed back against him and said that what he said was dishonest. So why don't we talk about the policy that's affecting American citizens and not what Donald Trump allegedly said, according to one guy who's pissed off because he got fired by Donald Trump?
And this is an argument that they hate talking about. They hate talking about what Trump is capable of doing for the American people. The point of changing leadership is to bring about change. That's the entire premise of this year's election. It's such a popular idea that even Kamala Harris, who's the current vice president, is also calling for change as well. But the point is that these officials who once worked with Trump are not happy about an individual that can't be controlled. One that's focused on making our lives better and keeping us away from war instead of running right into it. Yet Jake Tapper, he's out here taking Trump's comments from different interviews and compiling them to make it seem as if he's saying all of these things at the same time, which, as JD Vance has called out, is damaging to a network's integrity. Why is it the fault of men for wanting to have a good economy? Is it because they keep pushing for this narrative that Donald Trump will put in place a national ban on abortion, something that he's never actually pushed for? Now, what's really alarming, guys, is that most of us care about the cost of goods. Most of us care about being able to provide for our families, and yet they're still making it an issue of misogyny. The problem's not about gender. They're like making up problems. The problem is that we've had Kamala Harris as vice president for the last 4 years. No one's complaining about her being a woman, and many voters feel as if these last few years have been some of the worst years of their lives financially. So it's time for them to stop telling voters what to do. Instead, they should give voters a reason to support them. Something that might be a little bit of a challenge for the Democratic nominee. Almost as challenging as trying to one-up Trump when it comes to public events. Michelle Obama also talked about voters who are still undecided, or maybe those within the crowd that are thinking of voting for Donald Trump. So she pretty much put them in the undecided voter camp. According to her, if you're pissed off about what's happening in the country, tough luck. But that doesn't mean that you get rid of the very same people who created the problems that we face today. Watch.
It is reasonable to be frustrated. We all know we have a lot more work to do in this country. But to anyone out there thinking about sitting out this election or voting for Donald Trump or a third-party candidate in protest because you're fed up, let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage. So, are you as men prepared to look into the eyes of the women and children you love and tell them that you supported this assault on our safety?
What is it about this campaign threatening men for wanting to vote for Trump or anybody else other than Kamala Harris? Now, again, we're being told that we are the problem. These people are professional gaslighters, aren't they? Even though it was their decision to have her enter this late in the game, they just kind of like installed her. Now, speaking of which, Kamala Harris wasn't having a good day here. In fact, she was heckled by the crowd, and I want you guys to watch her turn around multiple times to try and ask for help because she's completely ill-prepared to face the American people like this. Now, what's also clear is how her mood quickly changes when she's challenged by the people. Watch.
And I got something for, or as a certain former president would say, yes, we can. So yes, we can, and yes, we will. And we will win because together, and this is about all of us, we are fighting for America's future. And we understand the opportunity we have before us to turn the page on the fear Thank you all. And listen, on the topic of Gaza, we must end that war. And we must end the war and bring the hostages home. But now I am speaking about 2024. All right. So listen, we have to understand the opportunity we have before us to turn the page on the fear and the divisiveness that have characterized our politics for a decade because of Donald Trump. We have an opportunity to turn the page and chart a new and joyful way, dare I say joyful, way forward.
This is the best that they can come up with? Going back to blaming Trump all over again? Now, this is just kind of strange, given the fact that this is part of her job. Not everybody is going to be happy with what you have to say. It's up to you to try and convince people otherwise. But this is obviously not going to do it for the former First Lady.
That too many of us are still confused and buying into the lies and distortions from people who do not have our best interest at heart. So I want to address some of these concerns head on. Because when you lay out the options, this choice isn't even close. But whether it's online or in the media or in our social circles, there are folks who say they're not sure about Kamala. They accuse her of not providing enough policy detail. Some wonder, do we really know her? Is she too aggressive? Is she not aggressive enough? There are folks sowing seeds of doubt about whether she's who she appears to be.
So here's something that the left has to remember. They initially campaigned with the guy that 14 million people voted for. Remember that guy? Remember his name? He's the incumbent president, Joe Biden. He was the guy that was supposed to be rallying the troops come November 5th. But something changed as soon as he was left to talk for himself in a debate. In fact, the American people quickly realized that he wasn't fit for office. Mainstream liberal media switched their take and suddenly attacked their own presidential nominee. You had Nancy Pelosi out there talking about him stepping down. And yet Michelle Obama's wondering why some people aren't aware of who Kamala Harris is. Well, she's been campaigning for just a couple weeks. And in that time, she really hasn't done much to answer any of our questions.
Voters have every right to ask hard questions of any candidate seeking office. But can someone tell me why we are once again holding Kamala to a higher standard than her opponent? We expect her to be intelligent and articulate, to have a clear set of policies, to never show too much anger, to prove time and time again that she belongs. But for Trump, we expect nothing at all. No understanding of policy, no ability to put together a coherent argument, no honesty, no decency, no morals. Instead, too many people are willing to write off his childish, mean-spirited antics by saying, well, Trump's just being Trump, rather than question his horrible behavior. Some folks think he's funny. So I hope you'll forgive me if I'm a little frustrated that some of us are choosing to ignore Donald Trump's gross incompetence while asking Kamala to dazzle us at every turn. I hope that you'll forgive me if I'm a little angry that we are indifferent to his erratic behavior, his obvious mental decline, his history as a convicted felon, a known slumlord, a predator found liable for sexual abuse. All of this while we pick apart Kamala's answers from interviews that he doesn't even have the courage to do, y'all.
Need I remind former First Lady Michelle Obama that Kamala is actually our vice president at the moment, and that this is the first time she's been in this position since she gave up during the 2020 Democratic presidential primaries? But of course, we're the problem. We're the ones that are asking for too much. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has done this 3 times and continues to dazzle us with his answers, which shows you the extreme disconnect between voters and the Democratic Party. Because it actually sounds like they're angry at people for judging Kamala Harris's answers. Yet Jake Tapper, he's out here taking Trump's comments from different interviews and compiling them to make it seem as if he's saying all of these things at the same time, which, as JD Vance has called out, is damaging to a network's integrity. CNN has been doing its very best to try and look as if they're calling this right down the center. But Jake Tapper has, again, proven that they're mostly leaning to the left. But what do you guys think about this interview? Now, I gotta hand it to JD Vance. He went in with a lot of class. I guess that's why he's becoming even more popular as time goes on. The complete opposite of what's happening on the other end with Kamala Harris. She is now being constantly booed at her rallies. Now, I covered another instance of this in a previous video that you definitely need to watch after this one. As always, appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing. Check out the next video, and I'll see you guys next time.